Hello everyone. It is time for this week's live stream. It is Saturday, January 27th, and we are going to be talking about some fishing news. Paul, you are first, and actually, it would have been no one if I didn't restart this and actually make it public. So I did. I changed my settings, and now I hope the microphone is the right volume. I hope everything is correct. We've got some news this week, guys, and I wanted to share that with you instead of doing some kind of regular topic because some of the stuff's pretty important. In this video's description, there is actually a link that you guys can read and then hopefully react to. And I will be getting into that in a moment. But let's talk about some good news first. So I want to share something with you that I thought was really, really pretty. And that is this right here. Look at that thing. This is a brand new hybrid tang that just surfaced in the last, I'd say 10 days. And it was brought to us by Kevin Barden of Surge Marine Life. It's a tang that is being, that was, tank raised, captive bred, however you want to call it, that they were able to release. It is not a bargain, but the sale of that fish will allow them to continue to build their business without seeking financial investors, so they can stand on their own 2 feet. So yes, they're looking for a buyer. So Surge Marine is new. They're in Florida, and they pulled off this miracle inside their home. That's the reality. So, contrary to what we always believe, that when it comes to tangs, they need to be raised in giant vats of water with massive amounts of live food. And this was done in an environment that's far smaller, unless they have a really, really, really big home and garage. But so I wanted to share you that because that's a really cool story and it's really exciting. There's a debate about what it is made from, what its parents are, and they actually don't know. They believe there's Scopus in there. And it could be a gem tang, it could be a purple tang. I'm starting to think it's all three got together and had some fun one night, at full moon, and boom, you have this really interesting tang. I mean, look at the markings on this body. It's just crazy. A really, really pretty fish. So, and someone's going to buy it. Hopefully they name it something really cool, and I mean like Spock, something logical that we can all get behind. So very, very exciting. All right. Then another piece of news that happened just literally yesterday, Walt Smith International made the announcement that they're shipping their first shipment of corals from Fiji to the United States. So that's going out next week. And if you have not been able to get corals from Fiji and, if this will be your first opportunity, these will be wild corals from Fiji. Fiji was a big importer of corals for a super long time, and we all just loved it. It was great. They came in on a big man-made foundation that looked like rock. You could put it in your tank. Of course, you could break it off, but it wasn't the little frag plugs. It was a decent little foundation, a little mound. And, we'd go to the store, and you could immediately know those came from Fiji. These were somewhere else. And, it turns out, I learned something yesterday I didn't know. Now at this point, because of the renaming of certain coral species, Acropora tenuis is going to be only found in Fiji. The ones that were in Australia have been renamed. The ones in Indonesia have been renamed. So this is actually going to be the source for tenuis corals, and it'll be really exciting. The Acropora is very popular, and so looking forward to seeing some of that. There's also going to be exporting of live rock at some point, hopefully in the near future. I mean, like in the next 2 weeks. And but this has been it was fine. We were doing this for a super long time, and then suddenly one night a decision was made, and it was just like banned. You couldn't ship anymore. It just shut them down. And it was supposed to last, a few days, 17 days, whatever, to get some paperwork finalized. Turned into over 6 years. So big news in that front. And then this one happened, and this one I got a lot of notes on. I'm just going to have to read stuff to you because it's very, very new to me. So I'm going to put this on the screen. This right here, if you look closely, is a type of nudibranch, and it eats acropora. So happy 2024, y'all. These little things, the news was broken on Facebook yesterday, a couple days ago. And it's from of course, I don't remember the name of the people that shared it, but it's out of Thailand. And so a paper was written. And the paper goes into, well, the title of the paper is Parasites or Predators, Gastropod Ectoparasites and Their Scleractinian Hosts Corals at Koh Tao, Gulf of Thailand, with a description of a new species. So I want to read the abstract. It's a little bit long, but definitely understandable. Recent years have seen a rapid increase in the study of coral-associated gastropods, in particular the description of several new species in conjunction with their host specificity or dietary variability has raised questions pertaining to their impact on reef health. These corallivores have been labeled as both parasite and predator by different studies due to the tendency of some species to entirely consume their quote-unquote host corals. Here we present new findings of corallivory and parasitism based on surveys conducted on the reefs of Koh Tao, Gulf of Thailand. A total of 6,566 corals were assessed for their tendency to host gastropods of the nudibranch genus Festilla, that must be right, Festilla, and the, oh my goodness, Canogastropod family Epitonidae. 13 gastropod species were found to be associated with 20 scleractinian coral species, including 6 that do not match the original description of previous known taxa. Herein we describe one of them, the first nudibranch proven to be associated with corals of the scleractinian genus Acropora, and discuss conservation implications of these coral gastropod relationships. Additionally, we will explore the complex topic of defining these relationships as parasitic versus predatory, and the merits of using these labels to better understand the ecology of these relationships. So, I looked through the paper. I can't obviously share it, but I can share little snippets. And so, I showed you this. Let me go ahead and move this picture up again so you can kind of see the bottom and see how small they are. It vanished. Hang on. Let me bring it back. Didn't need to do that. Let me shrink it down. So, and I've got, let me just describe what it says the different squares on this image are. So, first of all, this thing is named Philista arnoldi, and I think that was by a couple of authors. It says in the A square, pigmentation differences as mediated by recent feeding and the relative presence of endosymbiotic Symbiodinaceae. And then, this is A through C. So A, B, and C is just showing you the creature and how it's absorbing some colors of the coral it's on to blend in. Then D through F, specimens in situ, which means in nature, on their acropora host, egg bundles indicated by black arrow. So if you look closely, you'll see the arrow, and you can see the little cluster of tiny white eggs right there. Oh my goodness. Okay, wow. So look how small that is. It is itty bitty, right? This is between the little corallites of this one acropora branch. And then they zoomed in, and they are microscopic. All right. Then it says right anterior for square G, right anterior of the specimen under light microscopy with living Symbiodinaceae cells along lateral digestive ducts with an eye visible in the top right. There's an eye? Is that the actual creature? That's its eye? Wow. For a sense of scale, in A and B, that's 1 millimeter long. In C, that's 2 millimeters. In D and E, it's 4 millimeters. In F, it's 2 millimeters. And in G, it's 0.1 of a millimeter. So these are going to be really, really tiny pests to be looking out for if we are receiving any corals from Thailand. And so here's what it said. A total of 6,566 corals, whether it was colonies or solitary individuals, belonging to 27 species were examined to host nudibranch or epitonid gastropods. Man, these words are hard to say out loud. Of these 283 corals, 4.3% were found. Oh, I'm sorry. Of these 283 corals, which is 4.3% of the collective, were found to act as relevant hosts. Among acropid corals, the one hosting the highest number of ectoparasites was found to be Acropora muricata, with 4% of 297 colonies assessed found with Philista species specimens. So it's not widespread. It's not in 6,000 that they found, but it's there. It's in Thailand, and if we're importing any corals from Thailand, there's a risk. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm sure Coral Magazine will do a nice write-up with way better flow, and you can read the hard words so I don't have to say them out loud anymore. But anyway, scary, scary stuff. And, man, first we were worried about acropora eating flatworms, and, we deal with it. And, then we had, red bugs, which weren't nearly as bad. And now acropora eating nudibranchs, and tiny ones at that. Now I will tell you, there is another type of species that I saw in person at Frank's Tanks that acted like a flatworm and were purple. And there's a video of it on this channel. It's like a 2 or 3 minute video where I actually was asking anyone if they could provide any additional information about these. It was several years ago, but Frank had them in his tank, and it was really bad. They were just destroying his SPS corals. And so he ended up breaking down the entire tank, taking everything out, cutting off anything that looked infested, replanted, and I'd say 6 or 9 months later, he did it again. I was like, what are you doing? He says, they're killing my corals. And he just completely reset the tank again, trying to eliminate them from the system. And, when you have something that is that destructive to where you want to reset your tank, it's a real concern. And those purple ones actually appeared in Coral Magazine, because I remember I was reading this news in probably Reef News at one point, and I was like, oh my God, I actually have video of this on my phone of these creatures, because I remember they were tiny, and they were dots, and I think Frank called them black bugs. I said, why are you calling them black? They're purple. And he says, well, that's what I think they are. And I was like, they're moving like a flatworm. They don't seem to have legs. And I was like, man, I wish I had my camera with me. And then I realized I have a brand new iPhone in my pocket that has really good macro zoom. And I was like, so I zoomed in and I filmed it. I just put the phone right on the glass and I filmed these little guys, and there was a bunch of these little dots, and they were just inchworming their way across the coral and causing this damage. Now, they have not become a plague that I hear about. They're kind of, I read it in Coral. I saw them at Frank's. And I have not seen, people posting about these things. Maybe they aren't aware of them. They're very, very small. But I believe these are even smaller. So we're going to have to really, really study our corals when we're dipping them and inspecting them to make sure we aren't putting pests from new corals in our aquarium. And like I said, right now, these were, it's a new species announcement out of Thailand. That doesn't mean they don't exist elsewhere, but Thailand found them, so they get the credit. So there you go. That was a big one I wanted to share with you. Okay, now the biggest news of all for this week, and it's the activists. They're again coming after the coral. I mean the entire hobby. They're not just trying to stop you from getting a fish or getting things out of Hawaii. They literally want to shut down everything, and it's very, very disconcerting, because here's the thing, and I don't know how to. All I can do is ask you to get involved, but I can't make you do it. But I can tell you this, these activists are doing everything they can to fight the aquarium trade, to fight fish and coral keeping. They just want to end it completely. They just want it gone. They don't want it to exist. And they are actively working on this. It's not like 2 or 3 people are doing something. They are little armies of people causing chaos, speaking for everyone, which is insane because they are only speaking for themselves, but they are the ones making the noise. And if we, 100 million hobbyists in America, I'm just throwing a number out there, but let's say 100,000, let's say 1 million hobbyists in America don't say something back to the, 4 400 people in Hawaii that are doing this, we're going to lose what we have. And I know that sounds super dramatic, but anyway, the link is in this video's description. Read it in its entirety. But I'll tell you this, it's a bill that's been dubbed the Saving Nemo Act. It's HR 6447. It wants to prevent imports or collection of marine aquarium organisms that are collected or raised using destructive practices or species at a poor survival rate in captivity. However, the bill introduced by Congressman Ed Case of Hawaii and pushed by the same activists that shut down Hawaii's aquarium fishery create impossible to meet legal requirements for fishers, exporters, aquaculture, and mariculture facilities and importers. These unreachable standards are not a well-meaning yet short-sighted attempt to raise standards of care for animals and protect the environment. This legislation will, by design, block the import of wild-sourced, aquacultured, maricultured species and shut down aquarium fishing, effectively ending the marine aquarium trade and hobby in the United States. And it goes on. And it talks about it wants to ban all imports, exports of collection of stony corals, seahorses, giant clams from aquaculture, mariculture, wild sources would be banned with all other marine aquarium organisms being subject to ban following petition and litigation from activist organizations. In short order, almost all marine aquarium organisms would eventually be banned from import, export, and collection. The bill uses vague and overbroad terms to ensure almost every species of fish, coral, and invertebrate will be prevented from entering the aquarium trade and hobby. For example, the bill bans the import of any species that has poor survival rates in transport or captivity. However, this is ambiguous language with no definition. The language also fails to account for the fact that some species require research and innovation to facilitate their successful husbandry. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And on a personal level for me, it really bothers me because I get a fish from the store and I put it in my aquarium and I'm going to keep it for the rest of its life. And I'm going to make sure that it has good water. I'm going to make sure that it has, the right temperature. I'm going to make sure that, it gets the best food so it can live its life. Where if it was out in the ocean, you know how that works. Something's always eating something else. This fish is always running for its life because there's always a predator trying to eat it. I don't have predators in my tank. My entire tank is reef safe. Spock, my Nassau tang, I got it in 2004. This is 2024. I've had the fish for 20 years. It has gone from a smaller tank to a bigger tank. I have had a vet look at it when I felt like there was a problem. I try to do what I can to keep my fish healthy and happy. And I get to enjoy it, and you guys have gotten to enjoy it through forum posts, through posts on Instagram, through videos on this channel. This fish has gotten a lot of attention. If it was just swimming around in the ocean, none of you would know about it. You would just see one among a few in some nature show, and there would be no connection. There would be, just like, oh, that was neat, okay, cool, or whatever. But no, we embrace this hobby. We grow things from nothing. We buy things that are microscopically small and watch them turn into colonies. And if all that was stopped, it could literally stop the entire industry. And not just getting corals or fish. I mean, what about the equipment for the aquarium? Now they're not selling that. I mean, it just literally is a trickle effect to the entire industry. And it would affect every business. So I am emphasizing that the hobbyists need to speak up this time. And I know we do this. It seems like every year we have another battle. And we have to sit there and debate against activists that what we're doing is not wrong. And they are going to always find something negative to spin into their cause because they just are so determined. And it's frustrating on every level because there's so much to be benefited from an aquarium in your home and from being able to take care of these animals for years and years and years and decades. And, I just, I wanted to bring it to your attention. Like I said, you're going to have to read this. You're going to have to reach out to your congressman and actually state to fight this bill, because if you don't say anything, then the only people saying something are the activists. So how do you think that's going to play out? That's the thing. I'm trying to say we need strength in numbers. We actually have to stand up and say things as a group. It can't be 100 of us. It can't be 200 of us. It's got to be tens of thousands of us that actually are making the effort. Which means if you're listening to this video now, if you're watching it, I need you. I mean, like when this video goes out, there's maybe 2,000 to 4,000 people are going to watch it. We need 2,000 to 4,000 people to not only do something, physically actually write their congressman, we also need them to share this information, whether it's this video where I talk about it or the link itself, which is much easier to migrate to all your friends and family and just kind of get everyone on board. And I feel like this is an uphill battle because so many of us as hobbyists just think about our own tank, our own home. We just think, it doesn't really matter. What if you had the attitude, I have what I need. I'm good. I'm not buying any more fish. I have no plans to buy anything else. So if they want to shut it down, that's fine. They can't take what's in my house. No, they can't. But for the next generation, of kids growing up, should they not be allowed to have an aquarium in their home if they want one? Should they be forced to have a freshwater tank? No, saltwater is beautiful and wonderful and fantastic and colorful and vivid and full of life, and we get to observe how everything interacts. We get to prune our stuff and bonsai it to make it beautiful. And to have a group out of Hawaii yet again trying to dictate what everyone in the United States is doing is, well, it's insanity. So I need you guys to do something, and I don't want this just to fall on deaf ears. I don't want you to say I'll get around to it. I want you to actually do it. I want you to join me. I want you to join I want us all to join together and speak much louder than they are. So that is my spiel. And it's really important that we get in here and look at what we can do to voice our own voices, make ourselves heard. All right, let me look at this chat. I want to see what's going on in here. This is not going to be a super long live stream today. I didn't come here with a big preparation. I've got some other things I can share with you, but I don't have a big topic for today. I wanted to share these things with you, and then we could do Q&A. Let's see. Marcus, I'm so glad you made it to a live. Welcome to the show. And Jason says he's writing out his outline for... Oh, yes. Please do that. Please do a lot of that. That would be great. Yep, Fiji is open. I'm so happy about this. I really am. I'm super excited about it. Jack's over here. She's next to me. Let's see. Thomas wants to know, are you going to buy that very expensive fish for your tank? I can't afford it. It's really expensive. I mean, I saw the price tag on the website. It was $10,000 for that magic tang. But it would totally fit in Caitlin's reef because it's so tiny. It'd be so cute in there. But yeah, I can't pull that one. I can't swing it. What's up, Jackie? Come on, go lay down. Go lay down. She knows when she wants me to get off this computer, she takes her wet nose and pushes my hand off the mouse. There she goes. All right, she's laying down. That's good. Can you see her back there in the background, maybe? Maybe not. There you are. There she is. All right. Let's see. Elmer, hello to you from the United States. He says hi from Holland. All right. Slide lock. I love that. Ryan's joking. He says the way I'm reading this information from this abstract paper, he says it's like reading a J.K. Rowling book. That is so funny. Rompifer says, dip, dip, dip your corals. That's true, but man, you better have an eagle eye. I think we're going to be one of those ones where we wear the magnifying glasses with the lights on each side to study the coral in front of a big magnifying lens that has a light going around it because we're like triple our focal length so we can really, really see. I'm telling you. Diacanthus Reef says, I'm going to wake up in a cold sweat from the nightmares from acropora eating nudibranchs. Probably with Mark doing the voiceover. The games you got to play with maricultures. It's so unpleasant. Yeah, Mitch says, as a professional conservationist, that proposed legislation, the Nemo Act, is not a conservation law. Scott says, has anyone ever tried to send in water with dissolved food for corals to see how it affected the ICP trace and minor elements in the tank? I don't know. I don't know. Occasionally someone will say, I sent in a food sample for testing because they wanted to know, like, where is the phosphate coming from, or where is, suddenly I have elevated aluminum. Is it from this food? And usually it's food. But how it affects, I mean, here's the thing. Food, generally speaking, is not a source of trace elements for our aquariums. That's why we buy trace elements to add separately from the food. If it was all contained in the food, that'd be great. It would be super easy. But then you would have to put in so much food to get the right amount of trace element. I'm saying if this was a thing, and many people choose not to feed very much because they're so scared of putting in too many nutrients. So I will say, I've got it here handy somewhere. I can share with you something if I can find it. Open, please. Man, my computer's so stubborn lately. I can share with you a preview of the next issue of Coral Magazine. Look at that. So this is the one that we're working on now. It's going to press here in a couple of weeks, and then it takes a couple of weeks to come out. It's the March-April edition. We're talking about filtration. And y'all, this has been a humdinger. Yes, old man term. Of a topic to go through and make sure it's accurate and up to date. And I'm still working on it. We've done 4 2-hour interviews with different manufacturers to get the latest get their input on what's going on in the market, what was working in the past, what is going to happen in the future, what you should not live without owning. What is your philosophy on filtration? All that stuff is in this issue. So I really hope you enjoy it. There's a lot of effort going into this one, and it's coming soon. So anyway, just want to give you that little peek. I only do that because Matt does it sometimes, so I guess now I know I can do it without getting yelled at. But I have to be very judicious how I do it. So see, that's the problem, though. Mitch says banning is the absolute last result in conservation. A real effort would support aquaculture and mariculture alongside programs that target actual population numbers. And yet these guys are trying to stop importing of aquaculture, of mariculture. Literally, you can't bring in anything whatsoever. And that, you start looking at these vaguely written wannabe laws, they can actually say, it can be interpreted that even the clownfish that you grew in your basement cannot be sold or shared because you're crossing state lines or something. And that's the kind of stuff they're trying to enact. And and I keep hearing this, and it's irritating to me. But I hear they pick us, they target us because we're low-hanging fruit. We're easy to go after. I mean, and I'm not a sports guy, okay, at all. I'm not. I never have been. And I'm definitely not into sport fishermen. And I know they go out there and they take boats and they go out and they catch these giant fish. They hook them, they yank them out, they take a picture, and they throw them back in the ocean. Or they take them out of the ocean and they eat them. I don't know. But that is way more involved than what we do. And it's a much bigger industry, and it's why they don't touch it. Because they'd never win. There's no way the fishermen would allow it. But aquarists, what are we going to do? Throw an air pump at them? That's how they look at it. They're like, we can do this because they're an easy target. And we don't want to be an easy target. We should not be an easy target. And the problem, I mean, really stems down to is that we don't have some organization, and I've mentioned this on this channel before, we don't have an organization that is filled with a bunch of lobbyists, that is filled with a bunch of money, that can have a bunch of attorneys to fight this stuff and squash it before it ever gets to the point of being a bill, a proposed bill. I mean, they can just go in there and say, nope. But, I mean, when you think about, and I'm not good at political stuff either, so I can't really get into it, but I do know big oil continues to exist because they have such a giant grasp. They have so many people representing them. There's so many attorneys in their, in their possession that they're always there to fight everything that tries to stop them. And that's why it continues to exist. And, here we lost the best fishery on the planet. The Hawaiian fishery was such a great one with documentation of how the fish populations were not dwindling whatsoever. They were actually increasing while they were harvesting or collecting fish for the aquarium trade. And yet it was still shut down. The data was ignored. So, It's one thing to say you shouldn't bring this out of the ocean because you're depleting the ocean. I totally understand that viewpoint, and I wouldn't argue with it, but that's not what's happening. That is not the argument. They're saying that you can't have aquacultured fish. You can't have Bengai cardinals that are being grown in aquariums on land, and you can't, in Indonesia or wherever, and you cannot ship those grown on land fish into America. That's what the bill wants to do. And the same thing would happen with corals. We don't want maricultured corals that you literally grew on frag plugs in the ocean. You cannot, that's not taking from the reef. You cannot import those into the U.S. It's maddening, it really is. Hey, Thomas, thank you very much for the super chat. That was really nice of you. Let's see. Oh, someone says no fish themed shirt this week. If I back up a little bit, it's a mag float, and it's got these green tentacles down low. Let me back up a little bit more. So I got this one at Aquashella. I said I gotta have this. I've been using mag floats forever. So and I could never wear it when I had a green screen behind me because then this would just be invisible. And I was like, hey, I can wear that today. But yeah, with a camera angle, you can't really see it. David says, I keep forgetting to email you. I got my doser and it's working fine. Thanks again. Excellent. Glad to hear that. Let's see. Thank you. Just Tony says, I have an assignment for my government class where I have to write to a federal official. I'll write about this. Perfect. That would be great. Yeah, this is just, it's super frustrating. So Tom is sharing a lot of little details in here. He said, for example, let me scroll up. It says, isn't the entire marine aquarium hobby less than 1 day's bycatch from commercial fishing? And then he said, 38 million tons of bycatch annually versus 15 million individual fish imported into the U.S. in 2005. 38 million tons versus 15 million fish. And our little fish, when we buy a fish, we are supporting so many different households all the way up the food chain. You buy your fish at the fish store, right? And that money cost you whatever. Like, for example, a flame angel. I remember when I got mine, it was something like $56. And I was like, okay, I want that fish. But the store made some money. The wholesaler made some money, the fishery made some money, and the guy that caught it out of the ocean made some money. So, I don't know how many people that is, but let's just pretend that's 20 people got some money out of my $54 times all of the hobbyists, and we get more than one fish. We get lots of different fish. And then we buy the equipment to keep the fish alive. So there's the businesses that make equipment, including myself, somebody that works with acrylic. And, then you've got the companies like Rod's Food, LRS, Hikari, just a few off the top of my head, that all are making food that we can feed our fish. And, it just goes on. We can go into water testing, and we can go into the guys that make the lights, and, we go into the ones that make the physical aquarium itself. Now, if this was completely outright banned, what are you going to do next? What's your plan? Do you just keep going until, I don't know, as different companies dry up and go away, you're like, well, my choices of salt are getting smaller now. I can't get what I always got because they went out of business because of the ban. Or, I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer, but man, it's like, leave us alone. We're not out here causing chaos. So frustrating. It says here, you can help by contacting your congressional representative. Tell them to protect the educational benefits, livelihoods, and sustainable development initiatives and coral reef conservation provided by the aquarium trade in the United States and abroad, and to oppose H.R. 6447. To contact your U.S. representative, please visit the naiatrust.org website, sign up here, find your representative here, and drop them a short note stating your position on this bill. So, it's call to action. I'm going to call you guys to action. I really hope that we can make a difference And I really hope it won't be just 1% of us talking. We really need to do more. And like I shared the story on my Mila's Reef page, and I saw one person said, thanks for sharing the story. And there was no comments. And I mean, I was just like, wow, dead silence. Instead of, there should be outrage on our part that, what are they doing? Why are they doing this again? What is the end goal? And the end goal, of course, is to get rid of the aquarium trade entirely. Just end the hobby. Just completely stop. And eventually, I mean, when you think about the futuristic shows that we watch, the ones where, I mean, I'm thinking of Star Trek. Even Captain Picard had a lionfish in his tank in his office, in his room. But usually you don't see a lot of stories with people having pets, unless it's a story driven. The pet makes a difference in the story. So that's not a major part of television and movies. There's some, but there's a lot of stories where it's all about the people the whole time. That's the drama. And if aquariums are outlawed, then what's next? Reptiles, and from reptiles, what's next? Dogs and cats, and birds, birds, then dogs and cats. See what I'm saying? It's like they're just systematically trying to end everything because everything's evil, and it's not. We spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of money, we spend a lot of tears trying to get everything just right so that our stuff can do well. Do we make mistakes? Do things go wrong? Does Murphy strike? Yes. But that does not mean that we didn't try everything in our power to avoid that from happening. And, then there's always the learning curve. And then on top of that, you've got to keep in mind, too, that as an outside observer, someone that has never had an aquarium, if you were to just open a conversation, a dialogue with someone and say, I heard saltwater aquariums are hard. And then they end up talking to someone like, yeah, I tried it for like a year and it just didn't work out. It cost me a fortune and I have nothing to show for it and I just quit. And they're like, oh yeah? What all did you have? Like, oh, I had this. And they're like, wow, so what happened to them all? I was like, oh, I killed them all. See how someone could interpret that as like, wow, okay, that's bad. But if, for example, you change that story and you said, hey, I've always heard that keeping dogs is hard. And the guy's like, yeah, I had a dog once. Like, oh, really? How'd that go? It was expensive. There was a lot of bills. I had to do the vet thing, and they charged me so much. The dog had a bunch of puppies. I didn't do it right. Oh, so what happened to them all? Oh, they all died. They'd be calling the police. You killed a bunch of dogs? I mean, you see what I'm saying? There's a whole different interpretation when you change the subject versus it's a box of fish or it's corals. Corals are plants, right? They don't really understand what they are, or they feign knowledge. They act like they don't know what they are. When they talk about giant clams, I could understand why and I'm talking about the giant clams, the gigas that are, like 3 feet wide, that are 90 or 100 years old or older. Yeah, I don't want to see those taken out of nature either. And I remember when on one episode of Survivor, one of the participants on the game show dragged one of the ocean and sliced up and ate it. And people lost their minds. Like, you killed that 100-year-old animal because you're on a game show trying to win $1 million. And I was like, yeah, I didn't like that either. You don't see them like hunting off into the forest and finding a cow and slaughtering it. No, it's a clam. It's some giant beast out of nature, that should continue to live, indefinitely. So yeah, I get that argument. I'm not going to dispute it because that would be ridiculous on my part. But I love tiny things. I love little tiny fish. And a lot of times when it comes to sustainable collection practices, they will collect the smaller fish, not the parents, because they want the parents to continue to spawn and create more fish. And so they will continue to produce fish on the reef, and then they're collecting some from designated areas that they're allowed to collect from. It's not that they're just going out there and saying, I'm just going to go find something. I'm just going to swim that direction. I'm going to grab everything in sight. I'm going to stick it in a net. I'm going to take it to shore. I'm hoping I'm going to sell it all. That's not what divers are doing. They are really systematically looking for specific things. They go in with a list. I'm looking for coral beauty. I'm looking for flame angel. I'm looking for potter's angel. I'm looking for powder blue tang or this or that or that. These are just examples off the top of my head. But there are a lot of fish, hundreds of fish. I think it's hundreds, yeah, that are being, that have been captively raised. That doesn't mean the entire list of all the fish I've ever been captively raised are producing hundreds of those fish every single month or year, that just means that it was done at least one time successfully. So in that case, we need to continue to grow that. Now, ORA for the last, 15 years has been a producer of fish for the aquarium trade. Biota for maybe the last 5 years has been a producer of fish. Poma Labs is producing hybrid fish, stuff that you could not get from the ocean if you wanted to because they're combining them. So we have a lot of choices for fish that we can get sustainably that were tank raised, grown on land, not taken from the ocean, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's always going to be some things that need to be taken from the ocean, but not all of them, because that's how you learn how to raise them. So you actually have to have some healthy parents to put together and figure out what it takes to make a beautiful fish. And like Kevin Barden did in that fish I showed you guys earlier, that little tang. What did I do with it? What did I do with it? Is it right here? Let's leave it on the screen. Look how beautiful it is. It doesn't exist in the ocean. Nothing wrong with having that fish. It is perfectly suitable to be in the aquarium trade. And if he could make 1,000 of them, I'm sure 1,000 people would buy one. It's not that you want to have the only, I'm sure there's somebody on this planet I want this one fish because it's the only one on the planet. I could understand that's a collector's mentality, and to say there's not another one on this planet that is mine, pretty cool thing, pretty cool story. It's a great fish story. But if Kevin Barden were able to make 1,000 of that fish and could sell all of them and continue to pay for his business to make more species of fish, that's fantastic. Would this bill stop any of that from happening? Apparently, yes, which is why it's such a bad bill and it should be squashed. So that's why I'm talking about this stuff. That's so true. Tom says catching aquarium fish pound for pound is basically gold compared to food fishing. You know what? Another thing is that's similar is drinking water in water bottles, or specifically water bottles of water is super expensive. Buying those one at a time versus just getting it out of the tap. I get it. It's filtered. It's cleaner, but it's super expensive. I can make a gallon of RO water for 3 cents, and you can buy. I don't know how many of those little bottles fit in a gallon. I've never done that math because I don't know what's in them. Are these 20-ounce bottles? A gallon is what? 168 ounces? Is that right? So 8 bottles. That's a great markup from 3 cents for the original water. And they probably get it for even less than 3 cents where they're making it. So, and yet we pay a lot of money for a bottle of water at the convenience store because it's convenient. Or... and this is the one that, it irritates all of us. We go to the airport and we go through TSA and you can't have any liquid. So you have to buy the high dollar Coke, coffee, alcoholic beverage, whatever it is while you're in the waiting area waiting for your plane. And we just do it. We just But because you can't bring the water with you. But some people choose not to pay that, and they will bring a permanent bottle, like a metal bottle or a plastic bottle that they put in their backpack for the plane. And when they get through TSA, they get water from the drinking fountain that is supposedly filtered. But yeah, it's like paying top dollar for something that should be so basic and inexpensive. All right, I went way off tangent. Also, I've heard news that, and because I don't know this for a fact, I could be wrong, but I think I heard exports out of Indonesia will end the end of this year of certain things, maybe. So, because some law went into place there, and and while yes, oh no, that means I can't get things from Indonesia. That also means all the people that have been working there to collect and produce these products for us, these fish and corals, not gonna be able to get them from this law. And that means those people are going to lose their source of income or lose their jobs. It's a huge trickle down. Everyone needs to do something on this planet to pay the bills and feed their family. So the economic impact of putting some kind of arbitrary law in place affects everyone. And if it's being done when there's nothing wrong happening in the environment, when it's not decimated, it's not being killed off, it's not being stripped of life, then it's an inappropriate law. And, when this banning happened in Fiji back, whatever it was, 6 years ago, I'm thinking it was like 2017, 2016, I don't know, it seems longer. It was a sudden decision by one person, like, oh, we shouldn't do that anymore. Boom, shut the doors. And, a ton of people the next morning woke up, found out they didn't have a job. Just like that. So, it's rough. It's really, really rough. All right. Do you guys have any questions for today? Because I can switch to our question mode. I think we should. Why is that like that? Why is that like that? Here, let's do this. I wanted to give you an update on the tanks. My reef desperately needs me to spend way more time on it. It's alive. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would love to have what I have in my living room, and so I'm taking that into consideration and not just whining about things. But I have overgrowth of corals that are stinging each other to the point of loss, or shading each other to the point of loss. And then I have, some pests. I've got some Mahanos that are getting out of control that I need to one by one eliminate from the system. I need to do some serious pruning, do some serious cleaning, just go through the tank and just, it needs a reset. Dwayne was talking about possibly visiting me in May, and I was like, oh, maybe I should wait till then. But it's barely the end of January, and that's 4 more months. And I think I need to get to it sooner. So I feel like I'm going to have to get in there and start making some hard choices of what needs to go to make things healthy for the system. Caitlin's Reef, I showed you guys a brief video where I have this weird brown stuff on the sand. It's acting like diatoms on steroids. And I talked with my friend Aaron a few days ago, and he says, oh, that is a version of dinoflagellates. I was like, are you sure? Because I've never seen dinos that looks like this. And he said it's something called small cell, and it's actually really easy to eliminate by dosing, believe it or not, silicates. And because I've been cleaning filters and wiping things down and cleaning the glass and siphoning the sand bed, but the stuff keeps returning within 2 or 3 days. And it has the look of just like brown dust on the sand, and the glass turns kind of a reddish, and it just kind of looks like cyano on the walls. But when I do the cleaning magnet, my mag float, it just looks like it's turning to smoke. It doesn't come off, it's not bubbly sheets of stuff, it's not like cyanobacteria, it's just this, whatever this is, it's like a dust. So I'm dealing with that, trying to get that tank cleaned up and better. The Anemone Cube project continues to be as I have time, and I just haven't had time at all. And I cannot believe I built the stand in July, and I'm lacking one little piece to finish it. I need a few hours on that stand and then get it inside and get the tank on there. And that is, I wanted to get it done for the last 6 months. And so it's on my hit list. The first thing I will be building in 2024 is going to be getting that tank operational, because I'm ready for it. You guys have been asking for it for a long time. Of course, I'll video it all and share it with you guys, because I think that's something to look forward to. Speaking of videos, the interviews that we did with the different manufacturers and advertisers of Coral Magazine, they were long videos. I got to edit down to shorter ones. They will be uploaded to the Coral Magazine the Coral Magazine YouTube channel. So what I'll do is I'll tell you guys where it is, and that way you can jump over there. If you're not subscribed to that channel yet, you should subscribe. If you're not a subscriber to the magazine, you should be a subscriber. I mean, seriously, this magazine, I'm going to put it on top of Fritz here for a second. No, I'll put it over on the side on top of the squid. This magazine should be in every single person's household, and I want everyone to subscribe. If you subscribe, it's real easy. You just go to coralmagazine.com/Milev23 and you save 5% more. It's only like $37 for a year's worth of magazines. This magazine is 116 pages long. It is nice print quality. It's not like a comic book. It's really like what they call in the comic book collections a trade. It's a nice, thick publication. This is how I buy my comics. I buy trades. I only get them with the semi-hardcover, and all the pages are shiny. That's what I buy. I don't like the old-fashioned type of thin comics where you had to go get like 6 different comics. You bought something where the whole story was in one. That's what Coral Magazine is. It's always all in one. It usually has a theme, and there's a lot of work goes into these, and every one of you should be a subscriber. So for the last, 4 or 5 videos, I've put the link in the video's description. I'll add it to this one after the show, so you have an option to get that. Please do subscribe. It does help feed Matt's children. He always says that, help me feed my children, which is funny. But no, seriously, you should be supporting the magazine anyway, because it's literally being written for you, saltwater aquarists. Scott says, does Coral Magazine come in a large print version? I'm going to say it comes in this version, and then there is a digital edition where you can see it on your screen, and possibly on your screen you could make the print larger. You could probably zoom in on it if it's a problem for visual acuity. So you could look at that. I can just open up previous articles in my browser, and I just zoom in as needed. So yeah, I think you could be able to, but there's not like here's a large version. I've never heard of that. Jason is doing his meanest stuff to me like usual. He says Anemone Cube project and face palm. It's just, I want it to be right, and I need the time to do it. And when I finally have some time, I'm usually so tired from being so busy that I just want to take the time off instead of like, okay, let's go tackle this. But it's one of those things, like usually when I get super aggravated about something, I really do it. It's like, I need this done. I've put this off this long. I'm just going to do it. And then I just go all in. And that's kind of what will happen with this project. It'll just come together. Let's see. Tom says that the brown stuff I have in my tank might be amphidinium. And yeah, I don't know. And I don't have a microscope. I keep thinking I should buy one, but when I go to Amazon, I don't know which one to buy. So he says I can ignore them, but it's too much to ignore. It needs to be resolved. I thought that maybe putting in some and there's other things from Brightwell that I could try too. But Brightwell has, Microbacter 7, which usually works for the brown stuff on the sand. But then my friend Aaron was saying there's another product from them that they had, and I can't remember what he called it. But I can get my hands on that and then put that in the tank, and that'll solve it up. The the nitrate, my tank does not have low nutrients by any means. Caitlin's tank was somewhere around 10 nitrate, and phosphate was sky high. So I brought the phosphate down to something more reasonable because I just was too busy and ignoring it. And but it wasn't from zero nitrate, zero phosphate that so many people deal with. Thomas is asking if he can add 2 more clownfish to his 65-gallon, although he already has 2. No, you can't. Marcus says, what are your thoughts on buying a display tank, the entire thing from the local fish store? The owner offered it to me with a really great price compared to what is included, new or even used. I don't understand that last part, but if you like the price and you like what you saw and you want to get the whole thing, you should. And maybe they'll even help you get it out of the store and into your home. It's possible. Lots of us buy used setups. You're talking about buying you say display tank. So I'm thinking with all the contents inside, like you're going to buy everything. You may suffer with some coral losses, if I'm understanding this correctly. Feel free to add more comments here in the chat so I know what you're talking about. Brian says, why don't you sell Hanna reagents on your website? I just never got around to adding Hanna. It's one of those things that I thought I'd do, and I just, it's one of those things, it just fell through the cracks. I can definitely look into getting that because I did sign up for an account with them a while back. Thank you, Andrea. She put the link for the Coral Magazine subscription. Wow. Tom says when he had his breakout, his nitrate was over 200 and his phosphate was over 2.0. That's a lot. Thank you, Ryan, for sending a message to your representative. That is really important. Can any of you identify what factory that is inside the Coral Magazine cover? Do any of you recognize that? We had several different versions of this cover before the final one is decided upon. Other things that are going to be in this upcoming magazine, just while I mention it, we're going to have the St. Thomas mushroom species spotlight. We are working on getting more information about a 6,340 gallon setup that belongs to a person. It was a fantastic interview. And he is the stunt double for Johnny Depp when he played Captain Jack Sparrow. So this guy's got a huge tank in his home. And I'm trying to get all the rest of the facts so we can put that story together for you. That'll be in this issue as well. And that cover needs to be updated. Something's changed since that was made. So let me take that off the screen. Go away. All right. All right, let's see if we got any. Razor by Brightwell. Is that the one? I thought that was something else. I'll check with Metrocat. She's my Brightwell rep. She'll tell me what it is. And now I can ask Jason also what he used, because he told me something, I just didn't memorize it. The Zen Ginger says, why can you not add a new clownfish in an existing tank with clownfish in it? Is it because of the size of the tank? The problem is with clownfish is that they pair up, and then you try to add any others, that pair will dominate and just attack and destroy anyone else that you try to add later. My own anemone cube, when I set it up, I had 2 clowns and a couple of eels, and there might have been a clam in there, and then of course all the anemones. And then one clownfish died, and the other one seemed very depressed and just would not come out, was barely eating, just was miserable and alone and missed its mate. And I felt bad. And then my friend Tammy had raised thousands of clownfish. And I said to her, hey, Tammy, I want a bunch of your clowns. And I talked to Matt Peterson, too, before I made this decision. I asked a few people. I said, how many can I jam in a tank? Because when I would go to her house, I'd see hundreds in this tank and hundreds in this tank, and they're in little balls, and they're just adorable. And I was like, that's what I want. I want like a zillion clownfish. I just want to see them like confetti in this tank. And Matt said, you can't do that. I said, all right, if you can't have a zillion, can I have 40? He goes, no. I was like, why not? He says, they're going to grow, Mark, and you're going to have 40 full-size clownfish. That's not going to work. I'm like, all right. So what can I do? He says, 20. Don't do more than 20. So I told Tammy, Tammy, I need 20 clownfish. I said, and because I have these eels, let's make sure they're not edible. So can you get me clownfish that are 1 inch long? Because she had a whole bunch of different generations. So she came over with these I think she came over with like 16. And we put them all in the tank. It was really, we went through safety stop. We filmed it all. I never shared any of it. And because that's my MO. And she introduced them into the tank. She actually had like this plastic deli cup with all the clownfish in it. And she lowered it in the tank and they swam out. And, immediately the ball went toward the bottom of the tank. But like 3 of them swam right up to that lonely clownfish. And she didn't know what to do with this new information. And the 3 of them literally went up and touched her belly, like together, like puppies that are nursing. I mean, it's like they kissed her belly. And she was like, oh, I love you guys, and I will be your mother. And she became the mother of the tank, and all these little clowns were in there. And for the first couple of weeks, they stayed in that ball that you always see, when you're watching videos. But then eventually they scattered throughout the tank. And I've had them ever since. And I think I probably have 12 of those, maybe 13 of those clownfish to this day. And they're all living inside the temporary tank with the tentacles. But they were all from the same family, other than the one that was in the tank by itself that was super introverted. So I was able to combine new clownfish with an older one, but it was only because she was not aggressive or dominating. She was just by herself and miserable. It would have been even better no clownfish in a tank and you put them all in at once. But that being said, I put in all these clownfish, but then because not everyone can get along all the time, some of them were attacking individuals. They would just seek out, what do you call it? Not seek one out, but just they just dominated the stupid little thing. And the little fish would be swimming and swimming and running, and it was always this pack mentality chasing it. To the point where I could put my hand in the water and that little fish would swim into my hand for protection. I could lift it out and put it in my refugium. And I ended up having to rescue 3 from that group and put them in a separate tank. And they're still to this day in the frag tank. And I'm thinking when I move everything over, put those 3 with the others that are in the cluster and see if they all accept each other, because it's a brand new territory and they're confused. But trying to buy new pairs of clowns and put them in won't work. And, you know, Thomas's tank is a 65 gallon. Even if you had a huge tank, like Tammy's 800 gallon, she had 4 pairs of clownfish. And in the 800 gallon tank that's 10 feet long, 2 of them chased out all of them. And she ended up having to take all the other pairs and put them in separate tanks in her house because she could not put them in there. And that's an 800 gallon tank. So we don't do it. Now, since we're still talking about clownfish, because it's on my mind, a lot of people have mentioned, well, BRS did it. They set up a tank full of clownfish, and it was all these different kinds. And when I talked with Ryan in person, I said, you know, your tank gets mentioned a lot. He says, oh, that tank is the worst. I'm like, oh, why is that? And he says, we're constantly taking fish out because it's not working. And I was like, that's what you need to put on your channel, because people keep thinking you can do it. Now, can people put lots of different clowns in a tank and get away with it? Yes. Will it work long term? Probably not. Could you get lucky? Some people do, but they are the exception to the rule. And I know we all like to be the exception to the rule, but generally speaking, it just doesn't work out. And in Thomas's case, adding new clowns to that tank, the tank's too small already. It's not going to work because they've been in there for over a year. And so to try and introduce 2 new ones, can't do it. But Zen Ginger, if you were going to set up a new tank and you said, I want to get, 6 clowns, I would say get them all from the same parent. Like get a cluster of siblings from one group that all were tank raised at the same time, and you can get those and you can put them in your tank and you can enjoy that. But eventually you may end up where you're down to 2. 2 pair up, one becomes female, one becomes male, and the rest are a bunch of its, and either they will be tolerated or they'll be aggressively chased out of the tank. Now, the one species of clownfish that does really well as a group, a harem fish, is the skunk clownfish, and that's what's in the 400 gallon. So if you were to look at this video from care of them. And what you're going to want to do is there's a couple of ways to remove ick. One of them is to use the method of hyposalinity. And if you'll go to humble.fish, literally humble.fish, and hit enter in your computer or on your phone, you can then go and read his whole article of how to fight ick and how to solve it. But basically, you want your 31 gallon to be fishless for a minimum of 6 weeks, possibly 8. That way, if there's any trace of ick still left in the system, it dies off because it has no fish to snack on. So that's why the tank is fishless. All the fish have to come out of the tank for 6 weeks. And the fish that are sick with ick need to go into this hospital tank and be treated to cure the problem. There are different approaches. Hyposalinity is probably the least aggressive and works well. And then after the period is done, you raise the salinity back up gradually over a period of time. It's all explained by Humblefish, and that way you know how to do this. And then the flatworms, and it depends what kind you have. If it's red planaria, I would recommend that you siphon out all that you can with airline tubing, because you only waste a little tiny bit of water as you're doing it, and you just go through the tank and you slurp them out as much as you can, day after day for 14 days. And then you treat the tank after siphoning them out nonstop with something like flatworm exit, and flatworm exit will kill them off, and that way what's left in the tank will die. Now the good news is, if the fish are out in the hospital tank, then when you treat the tank to kill the flatworms exit, the reaction to the flatworm exit, because what happens is these flatworms commit suicide and then they just apparently release like ammonia into the water, there won't be any fish to hurt because there's no fish in the tank. So it's really the perfect time for you to take care of the flatworm problem. Now, if it's not red planaria and it's a different type of aeolid, you still can siphon it out. We really would need to see them. So if you have the time and the inclination to post your pictures of the flatworms in Club Mila's Reef, that would be ideal, because then we can see them and we can assist you better. But flatworms, there's lots of different ones. There's even these giant ones that eat clams and snails. And with those, you just siphon them out because they're huge. They're easy to get to. I mean, you see them, you put a giant 1-inch tube on there, and you just go, and you vacuum it out. And you want to remove the entire animal. And odds are it'll tear, and you got to make sure to get all of it. But usually if you see one, you might have 1 or 2 more, but they're huge. And they tend to live in the overflow box. They like that spot. So it's not like they're just everywhere, but it just depends. I don't know what kind you have, so we need to see it. So put it in Club Mila's Reef so we can see it and we can assist you. What? Oh, that makes sense. Thank you, Andrea. You're right. I didn't pay attention to that. I'm sure I left something out now because I was talking during that video feed, and I think my microphone was off. So let me go back to the clownfish because I talked a bunch about that while it was off. The clownfish that you saw in my 400-gallon reef, those are skunk clownfish. I've had them probably since 2015. They are a harem fish. You can literally get a bunch of them and put them in the tank, and they will all get along. They go from biggest to smallest. And I put in 11. I think I still have 11. I have to do a head count. I haven't checked in a couple of months. But you will occasionally see some skirmishes where they seem to be fighting and chasing each other. But they still all come back to home to be with each other. It's just like a real family, right? Let's see. I'll have to be more aware of that when I switch videos. Because I do know sometimes it just automatically turns things off. The next question, or actually statement here, said, Reef Keeper said, I tried adding a second pair to my 8-foot tank. The female from the original group chased the male away of the new group. Now the second pair live in another tank. Michael Noonley says, I have a pair of clownfish going to upgrade to a 500-gallon tank. Could I add another pair or 2 of clownfish at the same time when I add the pair I already have? You can try. That's what Tammy tried. She set up her giant tank and she put in all of her babies, and she loved on those things and fed the crap out of them, but she still had the same territorial disputes, so there's no guarantee it's going to work out. In generally, I just say just get the pair and just be happy and focus on clusters of other fish. Like, people like to get a bunch of chromis, for example. They like to get a few tangs. They want to get a couple angelfish. They get a butterfly, and then they might get a few Fridmanis or a few Royal Grammas. That kind of, you can do groups of those. But clownfish, it really is just best to go with the pair. Generally speaking. Thomas says, do you have Phosphate-RX in stock? Yes, I do. And it's ready to ship on Monday. I have all kinds of goodies you can buy on Mila's Reef. So that's how I stay in business. That's how I keep the lights on and feed my dog and feed my reef. So yes, if you can buy things from shop.milasreef.com, that is the official shop of the website. If you have any problems, please let me know. We've done some more work on the website recently to correct some issues that cropped up. I think they're all fixed. If you say, hey, I can't do it or I'm getting an error, please tell me what it is, because I want to squash them all. I want you guys to feel like you are able to buy things easily and not find it to be frustrating. I actually get a little embarrassed when people are trying to buy things from me and the website doesn't play nice. I'm like, man, I know I can't compare myself to multi-million-dollar businesses that have the perfect website, but I really do want a shop that works so that you can buy things, I can sell you things, you can be happy, I can be fed. So I would really like to make sure that I'm on top of that. Ray Rock says, what if you mixed a pair of established storms with a different looking species, like a pair of Spacintus clownfish? The mixing thing just doesn't work. I don't know how much didn't come through. I don't remember what all I talked about while I was showing that other video. I'm sorry, I put it up there. I thought I would just talk in the background. I didn't realize I was being muted by myself. But generally speaking, it just doesn't work out. So I would just recommend enjoy the ones you have now and don't try to mix it up. Set up a separate tank for them so you can have these cool ones. And, I'm not suggesting you set up a bunch of 6-gallon aquariums so you can have a pair here, a pair here, a pair here. But it really would be nice if you could have, a couple of different biotopes. And this one's a softy tank, and this one's an SBS, and this one's a clownfish anemone tank. That kind of thing. And you can get a little creative. I've actually got thoughts about more tanks for this year. The anemone cube's going up first, absolutely. I've got another tank that's going to go up. I've got a... I'm tearing down the frag system and replacing it with a different one that's better, with a small quarantine tank next to it permanently, which I'm very excited to get. I'd like to get started on, but I don't want to do that till the anemone cube is up. I want to got to go in the right order. I got to do that. And then I was just talking with Matt over at Coral. We were talking about a different tank that I might set up, that I might put out in the studio. I told you guys I would absolutely not put any kind of water out there. But this little tank might be the exception to the rule, because I don't think it'll be a problem for humidity, because I glue acrylic out there and I don't want humidity to rise in the studio where I work because it affects the glue joints. So I need those seams to stay nice and clear and not turn white from moisture in the air. But this little tiny tank has a possibility of being out there with me. So that could happen in the coming months. But the anemone cube goes up first. Tom says, I had just started a cichlid tank and was blown away by one of your tanks. Well, thank you for saying that. He said, your videos from around that time, along with Mike and Sanjay on the American Reef Channel, are what got me addicted to this hobby. It just takes a video or two to get you sucked in. I watch a lot of YouTube myself, and I see things like, oh, I want that. Like, for example, one thing I'd like to do that has nothing to do with this hobby, I would like to set up a tank filled with the colorful tree frogs. And I think they're awesome. I really want to do those little frogs. But I want one of every color, and everyone I've spoken to says, don't you dare. So, guess I'll have to get all of the same color, which sounds super boring and kind of talks me out of it. Thomas says, could I? A friend of mine has two 6-line wrasses. He texted me, asked if I would like to put one in my tank. You can. A 6-line wrasse can be a bit of a bully. It may kind of, be rough on the other fish you have in your tank right now. It's just a possibility. It could be a nice citizen, but I've seen your tank. It doesn't have a lot of rocks. There's not a lot of hiding spaces. And you could try. You can see how it works out. If it doesn't, you'll have to catch it and give it back to your friend. Wow. Reef Keeper said in one of my tanks, I've had a single clownfish for 31 years. I've tried a few times to give her a mate, but I guess she wants to be single. That's funny. Usually if you can find a smaller clownfish, then it will become the mate, and it'll become the male for the larger one, which is going to invariably be the female. But yeah, 31 years old, doesn't want anyone new in her life. I could see that being a legit hurdle you can't overcome. Yeah, poison dart frogs. Poison. Another reason to get them, right? They're made of poison. Let's see. Any other tank news I got for you? I don't think so. I think... Oh, and once I get the anemone cube up, I can get to my algae turf scrubber and I can clean it properly because I cannot get to it. It's just impossible. And every time I have to clean it, I have to move an aquarium out of the way, which is 27 gallons of water. And it's on a stand that I built, which you guys saw in a video a long time ago. I remember people said, that'll never hold. It's been up for more than a year. With me moving it, that's even crazier. I keep having to drain the tank halfway and then walk the tank out of the way to get to the algae turf scrubber to take out the drawer to clean it. So I'm not getting the harvest I should be getting. It's just bad. But I didn't want to turn it off because I didn't want to kill all the algae on the screen. So I just keep it operational. I'm running it badly. And I look forward to just being a normal hobbyist that can get to his sump and do what he needs to do and have a normal anemone cube right there in the kitchen again where it's going to be beautiful. And I hope that you guys are going to love it and enjoy it. And I'll probably share tons of videos of it because you'll finally get what you've been asking me for so long. And it's not that I don't want to give you what you want. There's just so many hours in the day and I get tired. And I'm like, I'll have to do that later. And this project is just one of those things that just keeps getting tabled by other things that come up first. Michael says, have you heard anything about Illumagic FX4 LED lights? I have not. Lynn says, I have a question about 2 turbo snails in my aquarium for about a year or so. They must have just had a bunch of babies. My tank is at least 50 or 60. And my has at least 50 or 60, and they're all over the glass. Is this good? Yeah, it's great. It's always nice to get free cleanup crew. So if you can end up with a bunch of snails that are doing good things and not being a pest, that's always the downside. You have something that breeds, and more often than not, it's something you didn't want, and there's too many of it. But usually snails are a good one. So, no, that's great. If you look at your tanks late at night with a flashlight and look right at the substrate, like where the wall of the glass goes up and here's your sand right here, you may see these little tiny ball bearing size or BB size or even smaller snails. They're whitish with brown specks. Those are colonista snails. They're great. And they are algae grazers. They don't go eat hair algae, but they do eat the algae off the glass down there. And you'll see them during the night. Like I said, pitch dark tank, flashlight, you're looking. And as you look down the length of the glass, you'll see those little white dots. I used to see them in my tank all the time. If your tank has wrasses, though, they may eat them all. So that's a downside. But they're a cool little snail. They never get big. They're tiny for the life. I mean, obviously the babies are even tinier than they are. The biggest ones I've ever seen were maybe a quarter inch, probably less. And usually less, more like 1/8 of an inch. Little tiny guys. And they're really, really cool. Let's see. Michael says they're only poisonous if you lick them. So it's like zoanthids. Okay, got it. Don't lick them. Thanks for the heads up. Let's see. Yeah, let's Justin, let's hope there is no civil war. It's been rough. Jake says, what is the minimum recommended gallon size for clownfish harem and minimum number of clowns for success 30? I'm not sure if you're saying the aquarium is a 30-gallon maybe, but like when my tank was the one when I got the clownfish for the 60-gallon, I put in 16 1-inch fish, and I still have almost all of them, 5-6 years later. So that would be, and you're saying what's the minimum tank size? Okay, that really comes down to what works best for you and the age of the fish and the type of clownfish too, because there are some clownfish that are small. Ocellaris tend to be small. Clarkies tend to be big. There's the saddleback, which is kind of like this huge clownfish. The maroon clownfish, that's right, or the gold stripe maroon. I had a huge one. It's like 5 inches, 6 inches, just a huge fish. Couldn't keep an anemone with it. It would just destroy them all. It would bite off every tentacle. It would just be this, it looked like a mushroom, just flat. And I was like, will it grow tentacles back? And it murdered a rose anemone. I was like, nope, not giving it another one. You can just call that rock your host. Unfortunately, it's some clowns are just too big for certain things. And that clown was in a 29-gallon. And while clownfish don't swim far, typically, that fish was too big for a 29-gallon aquarium. So, you're trying to paint the ideal tank size. There's so many things to keep in mind, but if we're saying the tank is square, like a cube, a 30-gallon tank would definitely hold a pair of clownfish no matter what kind you get. It would be fine. If you were trying to have a harem of clownfish, I put a harem of skunk clownfish in a 400-gallon, and while they will swim all over the place to chase food, they live in a 2-foot area most of the day. If you were, like when we go to the trade shows like MACNA, which we spoke about last weekend, I hope you guys are going. When you go to these events, you'll see ORA sets up this beautiful tank. It might be a 90-gallon. It might be, I don't know what size it is. I've never actually asked the dimensions of the tank, but it's filled with tank-raised fish, and a ton of them are clownfish. And it just looks amazing because they're only there for 5 days tops, right? And so they don't have anything they call home. They've just been put on display, and it looks really cool. So much activity. It's really nice. And then they take them all back to their facility where they go into their proper tanks, and then they get sold into the aquarium hobby. But that type of density is not typical in a saltwater aquarium because we typically just cannot build a good enough filtration system to support that load. It's just too much too much biomass, too much bio waste, and that's why we're talking about filtration in the in this upcoming issue of Coral Magazine, because we wanted to get to the nitty gritty of what's necessary. Here's the thing. One manufacturer said to us that they get the overall impression that people don't feed their fish enough. And I would not disagree with that statement, because I read posts where people's like, yeah, I'm worried about nitrate and phosphate, so I only feed my fish like every other day, or I feed 2 times a week, or I only give them a half a cube. And I'm just like, how much food did you put on your plate today for yourself? That's what I want to know. And half of your day is lying down, and a lot of your day is sitting down. The fish are swimming all the time. All the time! How often do you see fish just sit and not move around and save their energy for that next meal? Anyway, that's a little tiny guilt trip right there for you. But no, seriously, feed your fish. Feed your fish. Make sure your filtration can keep up. That's what matters, to keep the water parameters on hand. Okay, another question here. So, Jake, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think you should always just to wrap up, you should always err on the side of caution. I wouldn't go for the maximum number. I'd go for a realistic number. I would try to keep it smaller. Like I said, with my 60-gallon, I wanted 40. I was told don't get more than 20, and realized that after a while you'll be taking some out. And so I ended up with 16, which dwindled down. I'm guessing I have 12 to 14 of them. I don't think I lost more than a couple. And 3 of them have been living in a separate tank, which I want to introduce back with a family, and I don't know if that's even going to work. But maybe, because now they're bigger and tougher. But I would say, if you would have to say, what space do I have in my home? You're like, I have room for this size aquarium. And you're like, okay, well, how many gallons is that? And you're like, all right. And then you have to think about displacement. You have to think about of the rock and sand, because that's less water. And the less water you have in the tank, the more polluted it becomes. The more water volume you have. Like, for example, if you had a beautiful little 3-gallon Pico on your kitchen counter that had a pipe that went out the bottom and went to a 1,000-gallon sump, you could feed the crap out of that little 3-gallon Pico all day long and never think twice, because you have this monster filtration in the background. But if you have a 3-gallon Pico with a 1-gallon sump underneath, you cannot feed abundantly. You have to feed judiciously. You have to feed small portions. You might have to do bigger water changes, to maintain that. It's really tricky. So, those all-in-ones that so many people bought, the Bio Cubes, I think they were called. They had minimal filtration in the back, and they were okay. And exceptional hobbyists could make a fantastic tank out of that, and others would deal with all kinds of issues, including algae growth and stuff that frustrated them, and were just kind of an eyesore. So it really comes down to the husbandry you're going to put in to take care of the tank, and the heavier the bioload, the more effort you're going to have to put in yourself as a hobbyist if you cannot adequately supply the filtration to keep up with demands. And then, of course, finally, will the fish get along with each other, even if you have the best intentions and everything set up perfectly and you are ready to do the hard work? What if they just don't tolerate each other and they are culling themselves right out of the tank? In that scenario, you may find that you're down to a much smaller group than you had initially anticipated. It just can't be done like it does in freshwater. Freshwater can have a zillion fish, and it seems to be fine. Saltwater, we don't do that. Dr. Satan Lucifer, what a great name, says, how likely am I to encounter Palytoxin, Palythoas, if I plan to include zoanthids in my mixed reef? Is tank evaporation a factor in getting exposed to Palytoxin? Oh, what a cool question that I've never heard anyone ask. Thank you for asking that. Palytoxin comes from the irritation of the zoanthid, and specifically Palythoa, which is a type of coral that is in my tank. And this time I'll make sure my microphone is on. I'll show you guys my tank here again. Turn on my microphone and turn off that that audio. So now if you look on the right side of the tank, beneath that big green thing, that's a green hammer coral, and underneath it are there's a greenish Montipora, and to the right of it are these brown things, like these brown flowers. Those are true Palythoa. Those things right there are the absolute makers of Palytoxin. And right under the clownfish there, under that sea bait, there's some more of them. And in the back of my tank, there's some more of them. I got these things with a tank back in 2002. And I didn't know what they were, other than I knew they're pallies, but whatever. But I've never gotten sick from them or from working my tank, and my house is not like full of fresh air. I keep it sealed up. I trap my air conditioner in here all the time through the summer. I trap my heat in here all through the winter. I'm not an open doors and windows guy. I don't even do that. If I open the door, it's to go out. And then I close the door again. And when my son comes to visit, I always say, "What are you doing? Close the door." He's like, "I'm asking my son a question." I'm like, "With the door open?" I mean, literally, he's standing in a wide open door, and just the AC is just emanating out and cooling the earth. I'm like, stop. So anyway, the Palytoxin usually is from you doing something, but that's not 100% true rule, because Joe's 20,000 gallon reef tank on Long Island was filled with these things, and it was to the point where the water itself was just filled with this toxin, and he would wear a wetsuit, and he's wearing a respirator to breathe underwater, like a scuba diver just connected to a tube. And Within 20 minutes, he'd taste metal in his mouth, his skin would be burning and itching, and he knew he had to get out of the tank. It became such a problem that he actually was scared to get in the tank. And sometimes when he got in the tank, the he would end up going to the ER. It was that. I was trying to think where I was going with that thought. He was getting, his body couldn't tolerate it anymore. It's sort of like, you become more and more susceptible to bee stings, and maybe that was the case too, to some degree. But even with gloves and all the protection, it was still getting through his system. And so he ended up a year and a half ago, he drained the entire tank, took everything out, threw away all the rock. I think they threw away all the sand, just completely bone dry, left it dry for a matter of weeks while they redid everything, repolished the glass windows, the acrylic windows, and then put in all new rock, all new this. No Palythoa is allowed in the tank this time. Some of us mock him about it, teasing, like friends do. And since he did that, and he planted all these corals a year ago, and I'm telling you, the look of the tank a year ago to where it is today, it's unbelievable. It's a full-blown reef. Everyone's like, how are you growing it so fast? And I know he's doing some stuff like trace elements and stuff too to make sure that but the Palytoxin was actually stunting the growth of corals and affecting him health, and of course affecting fish health as well. So you asked specifically, will it hurt me from evaporation? I'm going to say no. But if you were to take a pot of water and put it on your stove with a rock in it and boil it, that evaporation can definitely put you in the ER and get the EPA out to your house to put a tent over your home, and it ends up in the news. And then everyone's like, oh my God, can you believe it? That guy's aquarium tried to kill him. It's like, no, he tried to boil something and he made it airborne. That's totally different from just having a tank with some pallies in there. Now, Julian Sprung, famous godfather of the hobby, has written all kinds of things on all the different topics, including pallies and algae and everything. He was talking 2 years ago, I think his Magna talk was how he was working with pallies, had no cuts on his hands, and the pallies had only gotten on his palm, and yet the Palytoxin went through his palm into his bloodstream, and he knew immediately he had to seek medical attention. And he said that's the first encounter he'd ever heard of anyone getting it through unbroken skin. Usually it's through an opening, a wound. And I was like, geez. So in my case, in my tank, when I've removed some, first rule, I don't lick them. It should be obvious, right? I don't know. How many of you guys just pull something out of your tank and lick it to check it? I hope none of you. But I would just take it out and I'd throw it away. I don't put it on the floor. I don't leave it where my dog can bite into it. I don't take it outside and pressure wash it off the rock. I don't try to chisel it off or scrape it off. I just sacrifice the thing that has to go. I have in the past tried to scrape some off the rock, from working above the tank, with a tool, trying to remove the polyps so that my foundational rock structure can stay. I didn't get sick. I didn't have any problems, but I'm really big about rinsing my hands and not touching my face, and so I've not had any kind of adverse reaction from them. Now, zoanthids in general don't have the same degree of Palytoxin that Palythoa do. And there are different types of pallies on the market, but true Palythoa, they grow a mat, and the mat has stems coming up with the head that is the polyp that opens up, the flower, so if you want to call it that, with a mouth in the center, and they have striations coming out from the center going outwards, like I don't know what to compare it to. Like the underside of a mushroom, when you see all those little lines going everywhere, it's that type of style. And those right there, you should be super careful with. Now, you can wear gloves to handle them. You could wear a face mask if you still have your COVID mask. You could wear a respirator like a painter does, so you're not inhaling anything. But that, and an eye protection so it doesn't scorch you in the eye and it doesn't get in your mouth. Those kind of things. You can do all kinds of preventative methods. But generally speaking, if you're just cautious and just self-aware of what you're doing, you should be okay with most of these corals without having to risk. But the evaporation from our tank is usually water only. Just like the salt doesn't evaporate, I've never heard of anyone ever talking about Palythoa getting into their homes and affecting them, making them sick just from having a tank full. And look, there have been guys in the past with beautiful aquariums packed with every color zoanthid under the sun. Just looked so cool. It's just like a rainbow of color. And there was no reports of sickness or anything. It was just like, I'm a collector. I love these. I buy every one I can find and I put them in my tank, and they're super good at it. I like them a lot, but I don't collect. I don't try to grow these massive mats. I probably should. I just never do. I don't know. I'm more an LPS guy, and of course SPS. Then you did ask, what kind of treatment should I have on hand? Benadryl is usually really good when it comes to some kind of a allergic reaction. But if you're having problems breathing, if you're tasting metal in your mouth, if your lungs are burning, it might be worth seeing a doctor. One of those walk-in clinics, and telling them that you have Palytoxin and that you might have Palytoxin poisoning. The MASNA website has an article about Palytoxin that you can read over, and has a lot of good information. Precise Sign says, what is the schedule for your refugium light? Hey, it's almost 4 o'clock. My schedule is 9 hours a day, and I have a light over the tank that is 2 different colors of daylight, 5100 Kelvin and 6500 Kelvin, and that has worked really, really well for my macroalgae for the last decade. So that's what I would use. That's what I use. Let me go back to this other one. Let me see. We're not on the question page. Go back to here. Different camera. Still have audio. I'm double checking myself. A 29 gallon with 20 clowns only if you had babies. And I mean babies. Like some buddy of yours raised them from a clutch of eggs and has a bunch of half-inch clownfish. Yeah, you could put 20 little clownfish in there and enjoy it for a while. And then after about 9 months to a year, you'll probably be trying to find homes for some of those. Huang says, having major problems with hair algae on my 15 gallon. I have 2 small fish, a purple dot and a yellow damsel. I don't know, purple dot. Snail is not doing the job. Snail not doing the job. Urchin maybe? Huang, you have a 15 gallon tank. You need 15 snails. If you would like to put in a tuxedo urchin, you definitely can. I wouldn't put in a diadema urchin, even though it's a hair algae eater, because they have these long quills, and when you work in the tank, those spines stab you on the knuckle, and they really grow big and will just become too big for your tank. I mean, literally, you have this giant thing in your little tank, and it'll be like turning like a centerpiece, but have nowhere to go. So I wouldn't recommend that one. But you should have snails and hermit crabs in your 15 gallon, and that will help. There's a product on the market called Flux RX. I sell it on Miller'sReef.com. And you can add that to the water, and over a period of about 3 weeks, the hair algae will die, which is a great way to get this under control. And then adding your cleanup crew of more snails and hermit crabs, it will keep any new growth from becoming problematic. Thomas says, should I add more rocks to my tank, or do I have enough? I would add a little bit more rock if it was me. I've seen your tank. I've always felt like it could use a little bit more structure in there. It gives you more places to put corals, too, as you start getting more for your aquarium. Brink says, I have 20 skunk clownfish in my 300-gallon display for 2 years. Nice. I only have 11 in my 400-gallon. What was I doing? What was I thinking? I should have got more. But you're winning, clearly. Ray Rock says, the best way to send you an article, you can send it to sales@miller'sreef.com. Do I still have that here handy? I'll just make it really fast. Pardon the font, it's just what's handy. So sales@miller'sreef.com. That is how you can reach me. Huang, you're saying that you're hand-picking it out. That's true. And, for me, when it comes to hair algae, my rule of thumb has always been use Phosphate RX first, but your tank is really small. And so it's kind of, the body of water is so small, it's hard to treat that little bit. You might be better off with something else. But that's what I was saying, Flux RX. That's just such a simple solution. You just stop the filtration. You don't have any carbon or floss. You can have floss in the back, but take out the carbon. Don't run the little skimmer if you have one. And put in FluxRx. And then after, I think, 3 or 4 days, then you can resume running the skimmer. And I would wait a week, and then I'd put carbon back in the back of the tank if it's an all-in-one. And the stuff will start to die off. And then you manually can remove it. And yes, hair algae is one of those things that sometimes we have to just do the bulk of it. We can't just keep adding another critter saying, eat it all. Because they don't, according to Richard Ross's presentation that I heard 2 years ago, he was saying how you have hair algae this long and it's moving in the breeze, right, in the flow. And nothing eats that because nothing wants that because that's the old long hair. They want to eat the fresh new growth. So he was saying, get in there and rip out all of that. Then the little stuff on the rock that you can't get with your fingertips, that's the new growth. That's the tasty. That's the yummy. He says, now your snails and your hermits will go devour that. And he says, you need to have enough of these little guys mowing it down. So as fast as it's growing off the rock, they're mowing it down again. And it made sense. I've never thought that we can just put some magic animal in there and it'll just eat every trace of it. Just like putting in a certain type of nudibranch won't siphon up every single flatworm in your tank. It may eat some. It may try to eat most. The only creature I can think of, off the top of my head right now, that will completely solve a problem, the harlequin shrimp will make the tank devoid of every asterina of starfish, and it's crazy. I mean, I went from tons of them. I put in the shrimp because I thought they were pretty. I thought, they'll never run out of food. This is the perfect environment. To, I haven't seen any asterinas anywhere. They're gone. To, I don't have the shrimp anymore. It didn't even occur to me that they had no food source and that they would suffer. It was just one of those, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I really thought 280-gallon reef, 10 million asterinas, they can just snack and find food daily for the rest of their lives. And I was wrong. So. Lynn says, do you know anyone that puts freshwater mollies in a saltwater aquarium? Do they do okay or do they die real fast? I do know people do it. I've never done it. And yeah, I think it's please do the research, but I'm sure there's some kind of acclimation process to get them used to the saltwater. Just put them in and just figure it out, buddy. But it seems to be something that works, can last for many years, and will help eat some of the algae in the tank. So it's not a bad idea, actually. I've just never done it. Thomas is asking if he should have an apex system, on his tank or not. I don't think you need it for your aquarium, Thomas. I think it'll be one more complication that makes your life a little bit harder based on our history of knowing your tank and our conversations. I think that you'll be asking me 10,000 questions about how to make it operate. It is, it has a lot of bells and whistles, and there is a lot of things to keep track of, and I think it will be frustrating for you. And I'm not saying that you can't have a controller. The Hydros may be a little bit more user-friendly, but it still has a lot of things you'll ask me questions about that will never end. And you could be asking me 1,000 questions about this controller and what it's doing or why it's doing something or why it's not doing something or why it keeps doing something. And while the livestock itself is really what this is all about. So I think your tank is small. I think that you're on top of it. You test your water daily. I just don't think you're going to need to add a controller at this time. The only time anyone uses a controller of any kind initially is to avoid the tank getting too hot or too cold, and they would control a chiller or the heaters. That was really what everyone bought controllers for 20 years ago. Now we've taken it to where we control our lights and we control our pumps and we control water changes and we control dosing and we control tests and we do all these things. But I think it's going to be too much for you specifically, knowing you for as long as I've known you. Ah, yes. Yes. So Dr. Satan Lucifer says, thank you for the complete answer, putting that topic to rest for me. I realize palythos are kind of a sore topic that's over-discussed to some extent. I appreciate you taking the time. No, it's no problem. And it's really something that needs to be brought up because there is a risk. And that's why I tell people don't lick them. I know it sounds so dumb. And I've seen people, post things and they've heard me say that. And they're like, yeah, I didn't lick them or anything. And I'm like, good. I'm really glad that you didn't. Because you should not. But palytoxin is a real thing. And so, for example, if you're working in a system that the aquarium water can get into open wounds or get into your mouth, like, for example, Anthony Calfo did a presentation for us many years ago at MACNA. And we were, the audience, we were rolling on the floor laughing so hard. It just was ridiculous what was happening. But he had this big tank. He was running an aquaculture facility. He had a whole bunch of tanks filled up with all kinds of corals and fish and zoas and clams. And apparently, I don't remember every detail. And I wish this one had been filmed because it's such a funny one. I think anyone that's been in this hobby a while would really appreciate hearing that presentation. But he's talking about, propagating corals. And then he talks about zoanthids. And then he says, so let's talk about palytoxin. He says, so the first time I got poisoned by palytoxin, and our eyebrows go up, like, really? Okay, how did that go? And he talked about, this. And then he says, the second time I got poisoned, and now we're chuckling. We're literally laughing in the audience because, come on. You got stung once, you don't do it twice. And then he said, the third time I got poisoned by palytoxin, and we're just laughing so hard you can barely hear him speak. But what had happened was the clam in the tank that had these palys, this ecosystem, the clam was spawning, I think, or no, maybe that's not true. The clam, maybe he was doing a water change because I remember he said the clam squirted him in the face. It does that thing that clams do when they don't like that you're messing with them or you're in their area, you're in their vicinity, and they will just literally shoot a jet of water at you. So it hit him in the face. Now I remember what it was. So the second time he got palytoxin, he got it on his hands. He was working, and he wiped his hands off on the towel to keep working. And then when the clam squirted him in the face, he grabbed that same towel and he rubbed his face dry and put the palytoxin all over his face. It's a logical thing to do, but the worst thing you could possibly do. And even now thinking about it, it's funny. And I don't even remember every detail. The way he told it, he was a great storyteller. So that was a really, really funny presentation. So anyway, you want to be very careful around your tank. And so, for example, maybe you rely on paper towels instead of reusing cloth towels. But for me, I'm always rinsing my hands in the sink. And so I don't get sick from my tank. I never have. And when people do, I'm always like, what were you doing? Were you like working in the tank and then you're like chewing your nails? How did it transfer from there to in here? So yeah, getting squirted in the face with tank water from a clam or from an octopus or a puffer fish, these are things that squirt at you so often. You want to be aware that if it gets on your face, you need to remove it carefully. Make sure it didn't get into your mouth, in your nose, in your eyes, in your ears. No orifices. Everything's closed. But, as Julian Sprung said, it went right through the palm of his hand. Now, the palm of our hand, it seems pretty durable, but another friend of mine, I've mentioned this story in the past, he used to do a lot of fragging demonstration presentations. And he'd be in a room, like a little lab. Everyone's got a table. They've all got their cutting tools and their glues and their putties and their frag plugs. And, they're doing stuff. And he had done so many demonstrations mixing the 2-part putty in his hands. But that stuff went through the palm of his hand. And they rolled him out on a gurney into an ambulance and took him to the hospital. Finally, his body couldn't take it anymore. So his presentation about that got me to where I always put on the rubber gloves when I have to mix the putty. And I've never been sick from it, which is good. Now, I've done plenty of stuff in my life to make me sick. And, I've done stupid stuff. But, invariably one of the ones that I encounter usually is I have to go up in the attic and I'm in there too long. And then, for the next few days, my lungs are burning from inhaling the insulation or something, whatever's up there. But aquarium-wise, I haven't done anything since, almost 30 years in the hobby. I think I got my tank in 97, and here it is 24. So, wow. But yeah, I'm just careful, and I always rinse my hands. Nice. HTC says I was infested with red flatworms and I added a 6-line wrasse. A few weeks went by and I had no more flatworms. I didn't do anything else, so I'm assuming it was the wrasse that did it. That's great. And you know what? Sometimes that can happen. But I think some people will hear that story and so they expect those same results. I remember when flatworms were a real big problem in all the fish stores here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Everywhere you went, no matter where you went to buy corals, there was flatworms all over them. And I really got upset with the stores. I told a couple of different people that I felt like they should do better, that they should clean up their systems and quit spreading this plague to every new hobbyist because they don't know better. They don't know. They just buy it because they think it's neat and they put it in their tank, they plunk it in there, and these things grow everywhere and propagate and become a big plague of weird looking things. They're like, what is this stuff? I thought it was algae. I thought it was cyan. I'm like, no, you have 10 million flatworms in your tank. So instead, fish stores, if they have a problem, should isolate, correct, clean off, and then sell clean corals. That's how I felt back in the day, and I told them that. And eventually they listened, I guess, because we don't have that problem in our Metroplex at this point, which is great. But I remember one fish store near me said, oh, just get a blue damsel. It'll eat them. So everyone bought a blue damsel because they thought, there you go, that's the solution. And I asked everyone, so did it work? Did it work well? Did it work halfway? Did it not work? And it was very sporadic. The answers were all over the place. Yeah, it seemed to help. No, it didn't. I can't tell. You're like, all right, so it's not a solution. The wrasses can be good about eating, but eating every last one of them, that's the challenge. So the fact that it worked for you, that's great, and I'm glad you had the perfect wrasse, but that doesn't mean the next guy that gets a 6-line wrasse will have the same good results. Thomas asks, how many more pounds of rock should I add? If you're buying dry rock, you could add 5 pounds and have quite a bit. If you're buying live rock from your local fish store that your uncle runs, you could probably get yourself a single 5-pound rock and maybe make your scape look a little bit different. The idea is to make it look so like there's caves, and if you can manage some kind of an archway where fish can swim under it, just create this natural looking rock work that doesn't look like a man came there and put a bunch of bricks. Because if it looks man-made, it doesn't look natural. And to just put a rock here and a rock there, that doesn't look natural either. It looks like you put a couple of rocks in a glass box. So you have to look at examples of other tanks. And you can go to Google and you can look at different pictures and kind of get a little bit of inspiration there and say, I kind of like that style, or I hate that. And that kind of helps you choose what might work. But then when it comes time to actually put those rocks in your tank and stack and alter to get your shapes, that's sometimes not really luck, but a little bit of chance, because the shapes of the rock. I mean, I remember at one point I had a bunch of different rocks, and basically everything was just like a fist. A fist, a fist, a fist, a fist. And you're putting all these fist-shaped things next to each other, and it just kind of looks like a pile of rocks. So you need some rocks that are flat, like a shelf. You need some that are like fingers, like Tonga branch. You need some that are, kind of larger with lots of little nooks in them. You need some that are smaller that you can use as placeholders, to like glue in. It's a whole art to hardscaping a tank. But, adding a little bit more rock in your tank to create more places to put things on and allow your fish to call home could be nice. So if you're going to buy live rock from your fish store, take your bucket with you, buy the piece of live rock or 2 if you like them, and ask them to put it in your bucket and to cover it with water and then put the lid on top and drive home. The reason we want to keep the rock wet the whole time, because it's live rock, it's not dry rock. We don't want any die-off. We don't want the bacteria to die off. We don't want the sponges that are on the rock to die off. We want everything to stay alive. So when you come home and you take that rock out of the bucket and put it in your tank, everything's alive and you don't get a cycle. If you were to buy the rock at the fish store and then they put it in a bag and it's kind of moist, and then you take it out and you're kind of looking at it and it's sitting in the air a long time, an hour or two, there's going to be the beginning of die-off, and then you put that kind of die-off rock into your tank, it can start a cycle because there's ammonia in the system now, and the tank has to adapt and recycle itself to handle the changes. So we want to keep that rock wet the whole time. They take it out of the bin to weigh it, to charge you, put it back underwater, cover it with water, put a lid on top, drive home safely, come inside, take the rock, shake it in your bucket so you get off detritus, and then you put it directly in your tank. So it's out of the water in the air for seconds versus minutes and hours and days. Now, if you're putting dry rock in there, you won't get any benefits from bacteria or any kind of additions because it's just rock, and it will be, usually it's white and kind of looks completely different than all the rest of the rock in your tank, but in 3 to 6 months it'll blend. But for a long time you got this weird thing that doesn't look like the rest of the tank, which might be irritating to your eyes. You might just like, that bugs me. I just don't like that. It doesn't look like the rest. So that's why I would get live rock, because that's going to look like the rock you have if you can get your hands on it. Winderwater says, I recently noticed that what looks like black sponge starting to grow in my reef. It has some holes and a tube coming out. It looks interesting. Should I keep it or does it have to go? So that, I believe, it's a type of sponge, and I think they call it turkey liver or chicken liver sponge. And I've had it in my tank and never bothered me. I just found it interesting. I was told by Dr. Ron Shemek if you were to squirt some milk at it, that you would actually watch it suck it in and blow it out. And I was like, it's kind of neat, but I never poured milk in my tank. Plus, you'd have to kill all the flow to watch this reaction. But turkey liver or chicken liver, whatever it's called, sponge can grow over things you care about. It can kind of get into the bottom of an SPS coral and intertwine in all the branches and start killing stuff. So you'd have to be pruning and trimming. If it's just in some area where it doesn't affect anything and you just like that it's something different, then you should enjoy it. If it starts to get bigger and you're concerned, you can start to try to chip it off the rock. It really holds on like super glue. It's really, really on there. You could try Richard Ross's method of putting some 2-part putty on top to like smother a part of it and wait 3 weeks and then peel it off and there's nothing underneath. That's a trick. You could try using F-Aptasia on the area you want to stop the growth at, and then after a few days break that stuff off and whatever was underneath will be destroyed by the acid that's in F-Aptasia. So it really comes down. But in my case, I had it my 280. It was right there in the front. You had all this stuff going on. There was this black stuff, and it was kind of, it changed the look of the tank a little bit. I thought it was interesting, and I left it. And it got into a couple of spots where I was like, it's kind of a pain. And I was like, whatever. It's part of the ecosystem. You get to live. So I wouldn't remove it. But, if it's near something you really care about, like you have this fantastic expensive chalice, and it's like right on the edge of it, yeah, you might want to keep the chalice safe and eliminate the turkey sponge. Huang says, my future plan, instead of growing GSP, green star polyps, on the glass, I'm just going to grow it on all my rocks. Bye-bye hair algae. You're just replacing with a different kind of hair algae, just green star polyps. Nah, that's fine. I've seen tanks with green star polyps. People love them. They're not old school by any means. They are very popular for the motion and the color they throw in the tank. The most impressive I saw was a couple of years ago where someone had put it on the bottom of the tank. It was a bare bottom tank. And they did the entire bottom, and they clearly cut it and everything. I'd almost would have said someone drew it in AI because it looked like a lawn. It was like perfect. Oh, that's insane. And it really was neat. But, as we know, that stuff, even if it is perfect on the bottom, will grow up the edges and up the sides and up the back and start to get out of control and putting these weird tendrils out, so you have to constantly be trimming it off. But yeah, if you want to cover your rock in green star polyps, if that's your favorite, you can. Just know that you can't put anything else on those rocks because it'll grow over them as well. Thank you again for another super chat, Thomas. I appreciate that. All right, let's wrap it up because we've been on here for just at 2 hours. I want to... Oh, good. We have a camera. We need to remember today is Water Test Saturday. Please do test your water. It's great to have those results in hand, knowing that your parameters are in check. If they aren't in check, you can make the corrections now before you start losing things. And that is why we do the water testing frequently, because it saves lives. And I do this reminder every single week, and I hope that you guys are listening. We are into 2024. It's a new year. I know it's almost February, but that doesn't mean I can't bring this up now. I mean, I should have brought up January 1st, right? But if your test kits are old, even if they're not empty, but they're more than a year old, you should replace them. I do sell Salifert and Elos test kits. You can get them off the website. I just replaced all my Elos kits with new ones because I knew mine were a year old. And so I'm prepared for 2024 for all my testing this year. And if you are doing the water tests, thank you for doing it. If you're not, please do them because it's the best way to keep your tank going well. What terrible English. The thing is, you can look at your livestock and you can say it's a healthy tank. It's okay. It doesn't need it. And that's true. And knowing the numbers might stress you out a little bit. Like, oh, my nitrates are way higher than I thought they were. The tank looked fine. And you might say, oh, now I want to fix it. I'm not asking you to chase numbers. I'm asking you to know what the numbers are. And if you know what the numbers are, then you can at least decide if you need to take a course of action. You can just track it. At least that way you can say like, for example, I had someone that wrote me yesterday and he said, my alkaline, my calcium, my magnesium, it's all over the place. I turned off my dose. And I looked at his results. And from 1 week ago to today, even though his numbers were like crazy graphs, because that's how the Fusion design draws it out on screen, like his calcium was 473 a week ago and it was 472 today. 7 days apart, and it's literally within 1 ppm of itself. So even though he saw this spike that's at 521 during one test, that could be an aberrant test. That doesn't mean his tank suddenly was at 521 for 6 hours, and there's no way that it got consumed and utilized in another 6 hours. So knowing what the numbers are over time is a really good way to see where things are. But it's always, what's way more important than a graph is the actual physical numbers. And if your alkalinity was 9.4 and now it's 8.1 in a 7-day period, you have an alkalinity drop that you need to correct. If you have magnesium that was 1375 and now it's 1410, that's perfectly acceptable. That's a 40 ppm margin of change, and that's very minimal. That's actually a good number to be around. I like 1400 myself for magnesium. It's usually what I recommend for people that have Montipora in their tank because Montipora drink up magnesium like crazy. But if you just don't know what the numbers are, like I wasn't testing Caitlin's tank for phosphate in some time, clearly, because it was sky high. If I'd been testing it every single week like I preached to you guys, then I would have caught it way sooner. So instead now I'm dealing with catch-up because I didn't deal with it. So when I remind you guys, I'm also doing it to myself. But then I get caught up with things that make me busy, and I'm trying to be better about it. So I bring it up to you to also remind myself to do it. And that's where I'm going to end this week's show. And I guess I'll see you guys again next Saturday. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye.